This beautiful... Hey guys. I just want to...
Why are you having so much trouble with that?
Is it on still? Just leave it on.
Yes.
Hey guys, Fogle here on A Healthy Balance, and today I just wanted to share my story with you, how I arrived in Taiwan and ended up in Kaohsiung, and here I am in this beautiful Formosa that I now live in. I was born and raised in Toronto, Canada, and I lived in the same house pretty much my whole life until the age of 16, and then my parents got divorced, and I moved from my dad's house to my mom's house to my dad's house, back to my mom's house, and then I ended up at my grandmother's house. And I was very happy there, and I felt this sense of home again, living with her, and then she died. And I feel emotional even when I talk about it, because she was just such a lovely lady. And we shared so many good times together in the time that I was there. After she died, I got a phone call from my sister, who was living in Taiwan at the time, and she knew that I was just spiraling down emotionally. It was just a dark time for me, and she suggested that I come to Taiwan. And so literally a week later, I had bought an airplane ticket, two-way, so that I had a return ticket if I decided that I was not happy in Taiwan. I started off in Vancouver, Canada, where I spent a few days with my friend Tim at his aunt's house. And then 2 or 3 days later, or a week later, I don't remember exactly how long, I moved to Taichung, Taiwan, where my sister was living. And I remember landing in the Taoyuan airport, and it was bloody hot, it was humid, I was dying, like the heat was just overwhelming, but I was a young 20-year-old man on an adventure of a lifetime. This was back when there were no smartphones, or barely. I mean, there were cell phones, but there were no smartphones. There was no way, no translation apps, and nobody really spoke English very well, and I didn't know any Chinese at the time. And I went up to people like, where is the bus? How do I get to the bus? There was English, but the signage was very confusing. Anyway, I found my way to the bus, and I managed to get the information that it was a bus going to Taichung, where I had to go, and it was stopping at a mall called Fogle, which was where it dropped me off. So I made my way, thankfully, onto the bus, and several hours later, I got off the bus in front of Fogle department store, where I was supposed to get picked up by my sister's boyfriend at the time, and he was running late. I didn't have a cell phone. I had to literally go to a payphone, I think, to reach him, and it was just an epic journey to get to my sister's apartment. So I finally got a taxi, and the taxi was following my sister's boyfriend. We couldn't fit the luggage onto his scooter, so I had to take a taxi. And he was driving too fast, and the taxi couldn't follow him, and we ended up going around in a circle. Finally, I found this nice person with a cell phone. I called my sister, and I think an hour later, her boyfriend found me, and we finally, after just no blood, but sweat and tears, I literally was in tears. My sister opened the door, I grabbed her and gave her a hug, and I was just so thankful to be at her apartment. She took me later that night, and we got like steak and eggs that's cooked on one of those platters, and gravy and noodles, and it's all just like basically fried right in front of you, and it spurts out, and it's a very traditional Taiwanese steak and egg dish, and it was really yummy. And then we went to a KTV, a karaoke bar, my first time ever going to KTV, and I had a little bit of alcohol and sang some Beatles songs, because there really wasn't a big variety back then of songs to sing. And I think it was sometime around my second week in Taiwan when they had this epic earthquake, September 21st, 1999, and all Taiwanese people know about this earthquake, 921. And it was the epicenter of the earthquake was very close to where I lived. And it was 2 a.m. in the morning, 2 or 3 a.m. I was sleeping on an air mattress. My air mattress was floating in the air, and it was like, bam, welcome to Taiwan. And I was like, I'm really part of this country now, living through that crazy earthquake. I'll share in more detail on another episode my experience with that 9/21 earthquake. Taiwan was a wonderful distraction for me, but short-lived. Never enough. And I moved back to Canada, and then I got bored in Canada, and I had this underlying dis-ease, and I moved back to Taiwan. And my second year in Taiwan is when I met the love of my life, and that's when my life forever changed in a positive way. But I still wasn't the best version of myself yet, but I was eventually going to head in that direction. And I met her on a trip down to Kaohsiung with a group of people, and we went to a nightclub/bar, and she was sitting at the bar having a drink, and I was dancing, and I looked over and I saw her looking at me, more in amusement, because I dance like a crazy monkey when I dance. And then we chatted, and then we ended up going out for a coffee the next day, and the rest is history. We've been together ever since. After dating for about 2 months, I convinced her to move in with me in Taichung, where I was living, and then I got bored and we moved to Kaohsiung, where she was from, and we lived there. And then I had this feeling of unhappiness, so then we moved from Kaohsiung to Canada. And then feeling of unhappiness again, and moved back to Taiwan. And then feeling of unhappiness or discontent, and we moved back to Canada. And this went on back and forth, and just this feeling of discontent once we moved to Vancouver for a year. And I think the move to Vancouver is when I had the whole spiritual change inside me. That's when I got into Eckhart Tolle. That's when I started getting into meditation and taking care of my body and my health. But living in Vancouver changed me for the better. And then I decided I wasn't happy. And then I moved back to Taiwan. And my beautiful wife just constantly moving back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Anyway, so we ended up back in Taiwan. The feeling of underlying discontent was still there. But I continued my spirituality, and we moved back to Canada, I think, one more time, and then back to Taiwan again. And then we had our first child, and that's, I moved him back to Canada with me from Taiwan, and we moved so much, but finally we moved back to Taiwan, and I'm happy to say I've been living in Taiwan, where clearly this is where I was meant to be at this point in my life, and I'm still learning every day. I still have good days and bad days, but I meditate every day, and I picked up different things that I do every day that have made me more complete and realize there is no better place that you can be. The grass is never greener on the other side. There is no Shangri-La outside of yourself. So to make a long story short, I lived in my house that I grew up in my first 16 years of my life. And then basically I never lived anywhere longer than 2 years until I ended up in the house that I'm in right now. I'm happy to say I've been here for over 3 years now. This is the longest I've lived anywhere since I was 16. And I'm happy. I'm happy. Thanks for listening to my story. Catch you next time on a